Good afternoon. My name is Thomas, and I'm the director of the Getty Research Institute. And I'm here to welcome all of you for a very special event. And I have this hat because I'm a director, and all the directors have these hats at the Getty. We don't wear them all the time, but for special occasions, like this one today, of course, we need this hat. This is a very unusual but fantastic moment, and I think it will go into the history of the Getty. To have Cornelia at the Getty is not so unusual because she spends a lot of time at the Getty. If you visit us a lot, you might even bump into her because she will sit having a coffee and writing her books, which is astounding. And but she is also traveling all over the world, reading and talking to people, doing good work. And she's so famous, of course, as you know, better than I do, but you know how many books she has written, how many million readers she has. So it is wonderful that she found the time to be here for an hour to read. And what she's going to read is extremely special because you have to know the Getty is not only a museum. It is a museum, but it's not only a museum. There are many other institutes, 3 other institutions. There's the Getty Conservation Institute. These guys are in this direction. If you would dig here, you would come into chemical labs where they do research how to restore and conserve important works in the world. And then there is the Getty Foundation, which gives grants to very important research projects all over the world. Then there's, of course, the Getty Museum, which you know, and the Getty Research Institute, which is on the right side, this round building, where we have right now the exhibition Connecting Seas. And in the Getty Research Institute, we have over 1 million books about art history. And we have also archives, huge archives, an enormous amount of archives. And they are in vaults, deep under the plaza. And as you'll see, a lot happens in these vaults. Normally everything is fine at the Getty, and we try to keep order here on the Getty, and you see it's all clean and everything's organized. But a lot happens we don't even know about, and especially during night. And we even cannot see everything what happens. So a lot is dangerous, gruesome, and you'll see. I will not say anything. You'll see a lot will happen. And you are the first to learn about it, because Cornelia wrote about the Getty and what happened at the Getty. And she will continue writing about this, and this is going to be a book. And you will be the first to know how the whole story starts. Now, I can promise she's really here. Of course, that is the chair. She's going to read from there. But it's always not clear. She's so busy and you don't know exactly where she is on this planet, but she's here. I would propose we just will try to call her. And we just call Cornelia. 1, 2, 3. Cornelia!
As Thomas is dressed so adequately for the occasion, I thought I need to dress like I just stepped out of one of their paintings. I hope this is the success. No. Luckily, I have a very good friend who's a very good costume designer, and each time I do a book, she says, Cornelia, do you want me to do a new costume? So this is one of them, and I thought to meet William Dampier, whom you see here behind me, this is the right way to dress. You may wonder already who that is. That is the ghost of the Getty. And his name is William Dampier, and you will hear about him in my story. And as Thomas says, I'm here all the time, I admit. They helped me so much with my research for my MirrorWorld books that I know their archives and their secret readings rooms. And at some point, I asked them, how can I say thank you for all the things that the Getty did for me and all the help I got? And I said, what if I write a story about the ghosts at the Getty? And they said, well, if you want to tell the public about them, we allow you. So you will hear about the secrets of the Getty. And as I love to write the story so much, you would have seen me walking through the pavilions and the wings and talking to the GCI and the GRI and finding out what this truly is, because the museum is just the icing on the cake. I had so much fun that I said to Thomas, I think this is the first of many stories, because I heard there are ghosts at the villa as well. And then I did not tell about that ghost in the West Wing, you know, the famous photographer. And then I met another ghost, the faun, and he does not really play a part in this story. So yes, I think I will write 7 stories at some point. And if that ever happens, you will find that book, of course, only at the Getty. And it will be my gift to this wonderful place. I have written many books about my favorite places in the world. There's another one, The Thief Lord, which was set in Venice, Italy, which is one of my other favorite places. I wrote one inspired by Liguria, which is the nose of Italy. I've written several inspired by England and Germany. This is the first that I write about a place in Los Angeles, which is my home, and which is, for me, the city I'm so hopelessly in love with that I hope I will write many stories about it. So, what we decided to do, because there are also younger ones amongst you who may think at some point, oh my God, this reading goes on and on. I just want to move a little bit, and you know, all these grown-ups sitting on their chairs. And no problem with that, but I'm young and my blood is running wild, and you know, I know about them. And as I call myself the spy of the children in the world of the grown-ups, I tell all the children here what we planned is I read 15 minutes. I hope that won't be too painful. I will try my best to make it entertaining. And then we're going to do questions. And these questions can be about, Cornelia, why do you have such a strange accent? They can be like, Cornelia, what is the name of your dog? Cornelia, what did you want to be when you were 11? I actually didn't want to be a writer. Every question is allowed. There is no taboo. I told the Gettys already, there may be more questions than you expect because there are children here. Grown-ups are very shy when it comes to questions. They think about this question for half an hour because they are so afraid they will not sound clever. No, children normally don't do that. They just ask the question. So I said to them, it may happen that questions take longer than 10 minutes, but we will see. If you are fine with 15 minutes of questions, then I will read the second part of the story afterwards. Then we may do another few questions if you feel like it. Otherwise, I will be outside at the bookseller table, ready to answer any question unanswered. And I promise I will sign any book, even if you walk outside and have a coffee first and come back, I will still be there. I will not be running away. And what I will also do, and we don't know whether that will be a long queue or problematic, but I would like to write the first names, which will take a longer time than me just signing books. But I feel it's always a more personal dedication. So I hope you all don't mind that you may have to be a little bit patient. And now I start with my story, which is called The Other Guards of the White Fortress. And of course, we all know that we are at the White Fortress currently. A child discovered the paw prints. Of course, they come in thousands to the White Fortress with their families, their teachers. Sometimes Anna saw nothing but boredom on their faces. And she had seen many faces in the 20 years she had been a guard at the Getty. Open your eyes, she wants to call each time she sees them walking blindly through the halls without realizing that not many places on earth hold more treasure and more beauty than the White Fortress high above the Pacific Ocean. Some come with open eyes, though, like the boy who found the paw prints, about 9 years old, hair as raven black as Anna's. They are under a table, the one with all the faces, he said. They are all shiny, and they look as if some kind of monster made them. He cast a glance at the other objects, as if he wanted to add, I'm not surprised there are monsters in a place like this. The paw prints were under the table of 1,000 faces, as the guards call it, East Wing, room 103. I crawled underneath to look at the back of the faces, the boy said. That's all I did, I swear. The paw prints were not much bigger than a skunk's prints, but they were of the finest pink red porcelain. Anna sighed, not again. Maybe it was them, the boy whispered, nodding at 2 candelabras on the other side of the room. Anna had actually chased the dragons who curled around them several times. They loved to pick a fight with a marble boy next door. They call him a dragon strangler. But they were carved from wood. No trace of porcelain there. The other suspect was the wild boar. It had broken a vase once, but its silver hooves for sure don't leave paw prints. Thank you, Anna said to the boy, trying to look as unalarmed as possible. I will take care of it. How? The boy asked. He looked very disappointed when his teacher grabbed him before Anna could answer. She was glad he didn't see the flashlight she took from the holster on her belt. It was quite a special flashlight. All Getty guards have one. When Anna pointed it at the strange tracks, they lined with silver, as she had suspected. She found more prints on the plaza. I guess you should tell the captain, said Jose, who watches over the West Wing. Yes. The White Fortress is guarded by many men and women, and they all know about the other guards. But Anna is the only one who likes to talk to them. So she made her way through school classes and tourist groups, turned left at the restaurant, and walked through the stone arch that frames the sea and the mountains and guards the Getty Research Institute. No other building of the White Fortress hosts more treasure, but the GRR does reveal its secrets easily. Most visitors never find out that beneath it 8 vaults reach deep into the mountain. You know why it is round? Anna always says when visitors ask her about the oddly shaped building. Because it is a well of knowledge, as deep as the hill it was built on. You find a book on everything at the GRI, everything. But there was much more to be found in the vaults beneath the round walls. Ancient maps and magical mirrors, sketchbooks, strange old board games, books on magic and alchemy, photo albums filled with people long dead. Each time Anna comes to the GRI, she believes to hear the footsteps of the past echo through its corridors. Hi, Anna, says Stephanie, the receptionist, when the guard walked in. The building was so cool after the heat outside. In the vaults, one had to wear winter coats. The cold may not be good for humans, but it's very good for old leather bindings and for parchment. Deeper and deeper into the hill, the elevator took Anna, until it stopped 8 vaults under the ground and opened to corridors seamed with shelves. They were filled with thousands of labeled white boxes, but Anna knew where to find the one she had come for. The box was marked with the imprint of an old Spanish silver coin, and its label said, "Compass, around 1680, possibly in the possession of William Dampier." Anna gave the box a soft knock. "Captain," she whispered, "it's me, Anna. I think we have another UV." A sigh and some swearing came from inside the box. Then the silhouette of a man took shape between the shelves. He was as pale as the light that came from the neon lights above them, which is, of course, quite normal for a ghost. William Dampier had come to the Getty with a compass he had once owned. In his lifetime, he had been a writer, a scientist, and, yes, he has to admit it, a pirate. His old-fashioned clothes gave away that more than 300 years had passed since then. "Anna, how late is it?" he asked, yawning. "One never knows down here." Shortly after 5, Captain, Anna said, "I'm terribly sorry. I know I shouldn't wake you before dark, but we found paw prints made from porcelain." Dampier frowned. Well, he preferred porcelain to the poisonous lead paint some spirits of paintings are made of. But he remembered a porcelain dog that had torn his left leg to shreds 3 years ago. It had taken 2 weeks and recipes from 3 alchemy books to fix it. "Well, alarm the others," he said, and faded, leaving Anna alone with the boxes and the neon-lighted cold air. "Alarm the others." Anna grabbed an espresso at one of the coffee carts and made her round. The bust with the silver eyes. The 2 chandeliers. The Chinese ewer. The wooden horned head. Anna just stepped in front of each object and whispered one word: "Oculus." Then she helped the other guards to get the visitors onto the tram before the museum closed, and the night turned the White Fortress over to its less mortal inhabitants. William Dampier was meanwhile passing through the gathering crowds like wind through a meadow. The visitors heading for the tram only noticed a strange, cool breeze on this warm Californian evening, as he had made himself invisible. Only a few turned with bewildered faces when images of sinking ships and burning sails suddenly filled their heads. Dampier was on his way to the cactus garden to find someone who had been on this hill long before humans starting writing, painting, or chiseling statues to understand the world. Coyote never made himself invisible. He liked to mock the blindness of the humans who came to the White Fortress. He was lying between the cacti, blinking into the setting sun, his fur covered with ancient patterns holding all the secrets of the stars. Coyote was not a ghost. He was the spirit of this hill, before humans had claimed it. "What?" he growled, when Dampier took shape in front of him. "Did something crawl out of those old books in the north wing again?" "I'm not sure," Dampier said. "I need your nose to find out." The setting sun was painting the walls of the fortress as pink as rose petals when they came to the east wing, and the stones that clad the walls were whispering about the forgotten lake whose waters had formed them long time ago. Of course, the guards had locked all the doors, but Dampier and Coyote could walk through stone, metal, and glass. Coyote sniffed at the porcelain prints and lifted his head. "Foolish and young," he said, "even younger than you." "And?" Coyote shrugged his furry shoulders. "Angry?" "Try to find it," Dampier said. Coyote yawned to show what he thought of that task, but he disappeared as swiftly as a shadow painted by the setting sun, while Dampier drew his knife. The porcelain came off as easily as he had suspected. A ghost's knife only works that efficiently on something not entirely mortal. If one named the buildings of the White Fortress after the rooms of a house, the GRI would for sure be the library. The museum would be the living room and the bedrooms, And the Getty Conservation Institute would be both kitchen and cloakroom. Its labs unveil the secrets of lacquers, paint, and parchment, while its conservators travel all over the world to protect the treasures of men from the sharp teeth of time. Dampier loved to, from time to time, steal into the suitcase of Jeff Cody, one of the conservators who didn't mind to have a ghost as his travel companion. After all, a pirate longs to travel. But on this evening, Dampier was not looking for a suitcase. The laboratory for uninvited visitors, or the love, as everyone calls it, is hidden in the basement of the GCI. And in contrast to the other labs, it has only one task: to protect the White Fortress from visitors who don't come with a tram. Sometimes there are ghosts like Dampier, ghosts of masons and painters, cupboard makers, goldsmiths, bronze casters. Sometimes they are forgotten gods or demons who survived in an object of worship. But most of the time, these visitors are spirits that an artist's genius created by giving shape to wood, metal, paint, or stone. They come in vases and sculptures, in paintings and the drawers of antique cabinets, in clocks and in the upholstery of ancient chairs and beds. They hide in photo albums and board game boxes, in the carvings of a silver frame, in maps and dioramas, between parchment and printed paper. Most of them become peaceful inhabitants of the White Fortress, but not all of them. The woman who was working at the Love at this late hour had discovered many of those uninvited visitors. Karen Trentleman held a tool in her hand that had once been mistaken for a gun by a 19th century ghost, but in fact it was a portable X-ray machine. Karen had modified it to detect spiritual energy in the artifacts placed on her table. When Dampier drifted through the door, she was analyzing a medieval manuscript that showed very suspicious shapes on the X-ray. "Come on," Dampier heard her whisper. "Tell me who you are. Where did you come from? Who painted those glorious initials?" "Such questions can be dangerous," Dampier said, stepping to her side. "Someone might show up and give you the answer. Shouldn't you know that by now?" Karen placed the X-ray gun next to the manuscript, like a warning to whatever planned to crawl out of its pages. "Hello, Captain," she said. "Do we have a new visitor?" All humans working at the White Fortress are so used to deal with remnants from the past that ghosts do not really surprise or scare them. Another thing Dampier loves about the fortress. Karen used a spiroscope to examine the porcelain splinters. Dampier had helped her develop it following the instructions of another ghost who resided in the GRI's vaults and had come to the fortress in an alchemy book. He was quite mad, but some of his ideas had proved to be very useful. Karen changed the spiroscope's lenses several times before she looked up. "Not human," she said. "Alabaster spirit, created around 1750, probably French. I'm sure you know alabaster is an ingredient of the so-called hard porcelain, which often creates a spirit when formed by a master. The glazing sadly gives it an armor of poisonous lead. I also detected traces of rose petals, lavender, geranium, but that shows in many objects, vases, potpourri bowls. In short, I'm so sorry, William, we have dozens of artifacts that could be the source." The other guards were already waiting when Dampier returned with these news to the GRI. He had never been good at leading men, but the others had chosen him. He had even been court-martialed once for his bad temper. But he loved the White Fortress more than any ship he had ever commanded, and it needed them all to guard it. They had gathered at the usual meeting place, right under the oculus, the building's eye to the sky. Dampier loved to sit at night under the huge round window and soak his ghostly silhouette with starlight. But tonight, there was no time for such immortal pleasure. "What is it this time, Captain?" The huge, horned man, whose voice reminded Dampier always of the ocean, was the spirit of a wooden sculpture carved on a tropical island by a famous painter. Hans was the other guard of the West Pavilion. Next to him sat Jiang Zhang, the other guard of the South Wing. She had come in a Chinese picture and had been an empress dowager in her lifetime, known for her wit and wisdom. She was not very tall, but she commanded the huge room with ease and grace. Her silken robes rustled when she moved, as if all the years she had seen were hidden in the embroidered folds. Jia Zhang had brought another ghost. The old empress liked to pick protégés, a round-faced boy whose drawing hung in the West Wing. The two wooden dragons on the boy's left were the other guards at the West Wing, and sadly not very reliable, as today's events once again proved. They were far too fond of chasing one another. Even now, they were snapping at each other's tails, but one warning glance from the other guard of the North Wing made them freeze and sit as well-behaved as trained dogs. Silver Eyes gave even Dampier the shivers. He was the spirit of an Italian bronze bust and had, as always, brought one of the sphinxes who guard the North Wing's doors. Coyote watched her with bristled fur, while Dampier reported what he had learned from Karen. Sphinx and Coyote didn't like each other, and their fights were legend at the fortress. Whatever it is, I found out where it is hiding, Coyote said. Well, then let's introduce ourselves to it and teach it the duties on this hill, purred the Sphinx. Duties? The boy at the Empress's side looked at them all with wide eyes. Heavens, he was young. Dampier hoped this evening wouldn't turn out to be too dangerous. I prefer to not call it duties, Giacomo, the Empress said with her soft voice. I call it our noble task. I believe even Coyote feels that way. Coyote wiped a fly off his pointy nose and returned the Empress's glance with his amber eyes. In fact, I do, though it may surprise some of the present members of this fellowship, he added with a glance at Silver Eyes and the Sphinx. I don't care for that table our visitor left its paw prints under. Heavens, what a monstrosity! Why does a table need 1,000 faces? But I care for why it is here, to remember the past, which is so easily forgotten. And I care for beauty, all the beauty you foolish humans create with your hands. For as long as you create beauty, you may not use those same hands for destruction, which is another passion of yours. Therefore, yes, this is the noble task of the White Fortress milk face, to keep the beauty in the world, and to make sure it is seen, for it teaches your kind to reach for the stars instead of knives or rifles. Well said, but why in the name of the ancient gods don't you tell us where the intruder is hiding? Silver Eyes' voice rung with impatience like a bronze bell. Coyote scratched his skin. South Wing, the left coffer in room 105. And now excuse me, I need to find some dinner. You don't need me for this hunt. As I said, it's just young and foolish, and you will be like a pack of hounds hunting a little fox. And gone he was. First part. So before I continue with the story, I thought I would love to hear some questions from you, unless you all decide you have no questions at all about life and the world and me in general.
How old were you when you first started writing?
I was incredibly old already. I was already 28, which teaches all of you who are here and are between, let's say, 5 and 15, don't let the grown-ups tell you you need to know already what you will be one day. I think that's a big mistake. I think you need to go the crooked ways to find out about yourself. So I was in my life a social worker, a book illustrator, an audio reader, and a writer. And I've produced a film in between, which was not the most enjoyable part of the thing. So please keep on dreaming, and one advice for you all, make the one thing, your profession and your job, that you are most patient at. Because when you are very patient at something, you will be brilliant at it. If you have no patience, that will be a very boring life. Okay, does that answer the question?
Was any of this story true?
Well, I can always rely on children to ask the most important questions. Well, what is true? Let's say I hope this is completely true. I hope there are hundreds of ghosts at this place. And I think when you walk around here and you feel how many stories each thing that is at the Getty has to tell, there must be some. So what I will try now is try to lurk them out with this. And what I heard is they have already an invisible beep at the GRI now. When you come out of Connecting Seas, sometimes now it beeps without anything being there. And the receptionist, Stephanie, told me that only happened since I talked about William Dampier. So let's say we try to make in life all the things come true that we want to be true. And I hope the story is true.
I've read your book called Dragon Rider, and I'm reading Inkheart, and I immediately noticed, even though they're both fantasy books, they're dramatically different in the way you write them. Why is it that way?
You know what the grown-ups will say after this to me once again, first of all? They will say, oh, Cornelia, those children ask such good questions. And I say, yeah, they always do that. Right, so thank you for that very good question. What I try with every book of mine, or let's say with every world of mine, I try to find the voice of that story. So I felt Dragon Rider needs a completely different voice from the Inkworld. I am writing currently the MirrorWorld books, which are for an even older audience. So I say to all of you who are under 14, don't touch them, but you will laugh at me and say, of course we read them. So the MirrorWorld books are very dark and very different from the Ink books. So I had many Inkheart readers who were so mad at me when I did that. This, once again, sounds different too, right? Because it's about the Getty. So if you ever become a writer, try to do that. It's much more fun, and you won't get as bored with your own voice.
Why did you pick that dress?
Why did I pick that dress? I have 3 costumes, okay? This one was made for the MirrorWorld. Then I have another one that's made for a ghost story that I wrote. It's based on Salisbury Cathedral, which is a very old church in England. I always wear it there, and luckily the tourists always think I am a ghost. And then I have a male costume, which looks like I'm traveling and I've been coming far. I first thought today wear this, but then I thought, look at this and look at the Getty. I need to look like I came out of a painting. So that's why I wear this.
How were you feeling when you wrote the story?
How were I feeling? Well, first of all, I thought, Cornelia, you're completely mad to think you can write a story about the Getty. This is such a complex place. There are thousands of stories. How is that possible? And then I have to say I had so much fun that I forgot about that.
Do you have a pet?
Of course I do. Does anyone here not have a pet? If so, we have to worry. Right? Because we all know what we have pets for. Pets remind us of the fact that the world does not belong only to humans, which is a very important reminder because we humans tend to take ourselves far too serious. So a pet is very good to humble us from time to time. I have a dog called Luna, but we call her Loony because that's what she mostly is.
Are you going to keep writing the Ghost Night series?
Oh, good question. Thank you so much. I am thinking about it because I love to write that book so much. And you know, every year in November, I go to Salisbury Cathedral in England, and we do night hunts at this cathedral. So we hide things from my book in the cathedral, and the kids need to find them. And I read at the sarcophagus of the knight who is the ghost in there. So I more and more think I need to write another one. Would you think I should? Yeah. Good. I will take that as motivation. Thank you.
What was the first book you ever wrote?
That was, I'm glad you don't know whether it's wrote or written, because I thought that's me being German. Okay, I wrote a book one night because I was the most bored illustrator in the universe. I was an illustrator, and they constantly sent me stories I didn't want to illustrate. So one night I sat down and I said, okay, get done, Cornelia. You can invent yourself a story where you put everything in that you want to draw. And I wrote a book called The Quest for the Dragon. I was not very good yet. But I sold it to a publisher. And 10 years later, I took that story and turned it into Dragon Rider, because by then I knew much better how to do it. And it's still interesting that that very first story made me a writer when I was just a bored illustrator.
What does your house look like?
Oh, good question. My house, you have to imagine it looks very old-fashioned because it was built 1928. So it is in a big garden. I have 4 trees around me, which are sycamore trees, and they are much bigger than my house. And one of them looks like a dragon, and that's not a joke. You can sit on one of the branches, you can ride on the branches, and everybody who comes into my garden says, oh, wish I could climb that tree. It's far too high. So, and then when you go through my house to the back, I have wild vegetables and herbs and whatever. And I'm at Coldwater Canyon. I'm in the middle of the city. And then suddenly you come to a little house in my garden, and that's my writing house. And it's full of all the things that children ever sent to me, and full of dragons. Sadly, not one living. And on my desk, I have a big ogre arm. It looks very real. It's every child wants to steal it. But so far I protected it.
Did you start your books in English or German?
Good question, too. I still write them in German. I wrote this in English because short story I can't do by now. I showed it to all the Gettys. I showed it to my cousin, who is my translator. I said, is this okay, or did I do weird German things? And they said, well, Cornelia, sometimes it's funny when you do weird German things. It sounds a little strange then and spicy. So it's good. You can do it that way. But I don't dare to write my big books yet in English. It is very torturous, though, because I love English by now. And so when I write in German, as all the Germans who are here know, German is quite a different language. It can be much stiffer, and it can be more formal. So sometimes I'm very jealous of what my English translator can do. And the English books are always slightly smaller than the German ones, because Germans need so many words to say something. So, shall we continue with the story? Let's see whom they find. Okay. Outside, the light of the stars made the fortress's walls shimmer like hammered silver, but the windows of the south wing reflected nothing but darkness. Why don't I go in first? The Sphinx purred, to give it a bit of a scare. She always sounded as if she ate her prey with fork and knife from a silver plate. I suggest we try diplomacy first, the Empress said. Dampier agreed. He remembered all too well how the Sphinx had once shredded the ghost of a German illuminator. It had taken the conservators 3 months and several portions of a very rare color pigment to put him together again. Usually, the south wing was very crowded at night. The fortress's ghosts and spirits especially love the antique 4-poster bed, and the sofa from pre-revolutionary France exhibited in its rooms. But tonight, the south wing was empty. And Dampier felt what Coyote had smelled. Anger. It filled the dark building like poisonous smoke. It's very silent, Giacomo said. Yes, the Empress whispered, and it's not a good silence. No, it wasn't. And then there was a sound. It reminded Dampier of a cook he had sailed to Australia with, who had thrown the plates with such vigor on the table that half of them cracked. But this was the sound of a huge plate. Clunk! There it was again. Maybe we should have the Sphinx go first after all, Horns whispered, while Giacomo's face turned as pale as the paper it had been drawn on. There. Dampier thought he saw something moving behind the pillars to his left, but when they stepped into the room, it was empty. Young and foolish, huh? Silver Eyes whispered. The whole room looked as if someone had sprayed it with porcelain. It was everywhere, like a shimmering fungus, on the big planisphere clock, on the marble from Madame Langholz's tomb, on the painting of the sewing woman. Looks like we need more than diplomacy, the Sphinx purred. She did not try to hide the delight in her voice. But where is it? Horn whispered. They all gazed at the same object. The dark wood of the coffer Coyote had talked about was ornated with gold. It was a big chest, but not big enough for a monster. On the other hand, even Dampier could shrink himself to the size of a hazelnut or grow as tall as the mast of a ship. It has its advantages to not be of flesh and blood. Horns stepped in front of the coffer, while Sphinx and the dragons positioned themselves on the sides. Dampier did his best to open the clasps as silently as possible. Nothing. Horns took a deep breath, as warm as a Polynesian breeze, and pushed up the heavy lid. Something burst out of the coffer and wrapped them in scents of spices and wilted flowers. A spiked tail swiped Dampier to the ground. A porcelain jaw snarled at the Sphinx, and glazed paws clawed at Silver Eyes. It was indeed a monster, as pink as a bougainvillea flower, with breath as hot as the fire that had formed its scales. Its wings brushed the ceiling until plaster rained down on the other guards. It could be a dragon, but Dampier was not sure. There were quite a few dragons at the fortress. Unfortunately, artists have a weakness for them, especially for the ferocious ones. Welcome to the White Fortress! The Empress had not given up on diplomacy yet. We are the other guards, and feel very honored to have such an impressive guest. But may I ask why you are so angry? The monster crashed a chair with its tail. Dampier had liked that chair. They don't look at me, it roared. They walk past me day after day after day without ever casting me a glance when they should be bowing in respect. Oh, if that is your complaint, the Empress said softly, that happens to all of us. I came here in a picture, which most of them don't find that interesting. May I suggest you look at them instead? It's vastly entertaining. The only answer was a growl that echoed through the south wing, as if thousands of porcelain bowls shattered on the floor. Okay, I agree, Horns called. It is outrageous how ignorant they are, and we did not even have any say in whether we want to come here. The painter who created me lived on an island far, far away from here. What brought you? A painting? A statue? A vase? Nice try, Dampier thought. They would need to find the object to ban the spirit. But the monster's only answer was to snap at Horns so angrily that it nearly took off his head. including the horns. So you didn't notice me either, it roared. Enough! I'll teach you all to see me. The painting it sprayed with porcelain spit was one of Dampier's favorites. Silver Eyes stepped in front of the door they had come through and signaled the Sphinx to position herself at his side. Horns and the Empress shielded the one room to the left and the right. The boy took the one at the far end of the room alongside the two dragons, who looked ridiculously small compared to the creature lurking above them. They had to prevent the spirit from leaving the building, and they could only hope that it couldn't pass through the walls. Silver and marble spirits couldn't, but who could say what the same was true was alabaster? You find out where it came from, whispered Horns when Dampier stepped to his side, and how we can shrink it. You're good at these things, but hurry, the night won't last for long. Find out where it came from. Dampier used up every curse he had learned at sea while searching for Coyote. Young and foolish, he yelled when he finally found him in the garden nibbling on the remains of a sandwich. Well, it certainly is, Coyote said. Compared to the Mayan god we once dealt with, or that Roman gladiator, what was his name? It is 10 feet long by now, Dampier barked. Find it! Find the thing it came in, while I figure out how we shrink it. Coyote finished the sandwich and raised himself to his paws. What would you do without me? He said, and disappeared into the night. There are 323 ghosts at the GRI alone. Photographers, alchemists, travelers, a few botanists. Dampier woke them all. He raised the alarm in all the 8 vaults to recruit hundreds of ghostly hands to search for the secrets of porcelain and the spirits taking shape in it. But he did not only alarm the dead. This also needed the living. Ghosts don't like to use phones. Everyone at the GRI knows that. So there's a button in the central security room which only the other guards are allowed to press. It was already 4 a.m. when the cars came up the hill. Getkins, the head of the GRI, whose great-great-grandfather has been a pirate on the Baltic Sea. Braffman, who knows all about manuscripts and the dangers hiding between parchment. Turpek, the guardian of all the old photos stored at the GRI, including their ghosts. And Isotta Poggi, who was born in Venice, one of Dampier's favorite places in the world. They all had come up the fortress at night for many alarms like this. And as on so many nights before the living, went to work with the dead. They read books on alabaster and porcelain and on the spirits that take shape in it. They found manuscripts on porcelain glazes, porcelain painters, and all the secrets of the craft. But the night was getting older, and each time Dampier checked on the others, the monster had grown until even the Sphinx looked worried. Dampier wondered while he crossed the deserted plaza whether the visitors would find a fortress clad in porcelain the next day. But when he walked into the GRI, Coyote was sitting on the receptionist's desk with a wide grin on his face. Found it, he said, pointing at a vase in his lap. A small dragon wrapped itself around its base, so small that it could certainly be overlooked. And so did we, said Braffman, curator for rare books, who was sitting next to Coyote with a ghost who had helped to build the spiroscope and the spirit gun. Athanasius Kircher held a strip of parchment in his almost invisible hand. My Italian is a bit rusty, Athanasius said with his heavy German accent. But Isotta, help me with the translation. The manuscript is from 1723. Porcelain spirits and how to contain them. I soaked the parchment with the listed substances and added a binding spell. You just have to put it in the vase the moment you confront the spirit, and it will have to follow. Dampier sent a silent thank you to all the men and women who had patiently gathered the knowledge hidden in the vaults below them while he took the parchment from Athanasius' hands. Shall we come with you? Braffman asked. But Dampier shook his head. No, you all did your part of the job. The showdown is a task for the other guards. I prefer to not have any mortals come near this creature. which means I have to come, I guess. Coyote sighed. So how big is it now, he asked, while he followed Dampier back to the south wing. The question was answered all too soon. A huge porcelain tail curled around the building, twitching and turning like the body of an angry snake. Coyote jumped over it, but Dampier had to climb. It was easy to pass through living bodies and the walls and doors they built, but this was immortal, and even for a ghost as solid as stone. The tail shuddered when Dampier touched the scales, and he prayed to all the gods of the oceans that the monster hadn't noticed. It was once again silent in the dark building, far too silent. No growls from the Sphinx or the wooden dragons, no word from the Empress, the milk-faced boy, or horns. All they could hear were the restless movements of the huge porcelain monster whose glazed body filled all the rooms. Dampier peeked through its legs into the hall where they first had seen it. Nothing. Had it devoured the others? I will teach them. He heard it whisper hoarsely. It sounded as if someone spoke the words into a huge porcelain cup. I will grow bigger than this fortress. I will grow bigger than their towers. Their whole city will see me, and then I will eat it. Crunch it between my teeth like a nut. For they walked past me all those years. Past me. Dampier drew Athanasius' parchment out of his pocket and froze. Huge eyeballs gazed down at him, as round and shiny as the porcelain eyes of a doll. Ah, see who is back. The monster growled, licking its lips with a tongue as red as a cherry. The vase. He needed to put the parchment into the vase, but how get it out of his pocket without the monster smashing it? It's not only him who is back. The monster turned its head. Come on, Coyote hissed. Catch me! He jumped onto the monster's neck and ran up its spiked spine while the monster was trying to swat him like a fly. Dampier reached for the vase and swallowed a curse. The parchment wouldn't fit through the neck. He folded it with trembling fingers while Coyote narrowly escaped another blow of the clawed paws. There! This time the parchment slipped in. The effect was so immediate that Coyote almost broke his neck. The monster shrank as rapidly as a balloon losing air. Its roar turned into a squeal. The very air seemed to turn into porcelain dust, whirling, dancing, and suddenly, nothing. Only the vase in Dampier's hands, with a small dragon at the bottom, looking rather grim. Coyote crawled off the cabinet he had landed on. Oh, another object for Vault 5, he said while shaking the monster's porcelain spit off his fur. Or are we running out of space? Yes, it was quite a collection by now in Vault 5. Spirits, ghosts, demons, forgotten gods. Yeah, there's still space, Dampier said. But I admit I'm not sure Athanasius' spell will hold much more prisoners. I fear we need to think of another system quite soon. They found Sphinx and the dragons trapped in the drawers of a cabinet. Silver Eyes had been locked in a vase, and Horns and the Empress hung from the ceiling like caterpillars cocooned in porcelain. It took the help of humans, ladders, and hammers to free them. I fear I may never again bear to drink tea from a porcelain cup, the old Empress said, straightening her robes. Outside the dawn was breaking, and even the ghosts were tired. But when the first tram came up, the fortress welcomed its visitors with open doors and halls of treasure, and all dangers safely locked away in its vaults. Only the south wing was closed for renovation. So, shall we do another 10 minutes of questions? Do you feel like that, or do you feel like running off? There are still a few, which does not mean the others cannot run off.
Are you gonna make more of the series of Die wilde Hühner or the Wild Chickens?
Oh, there's a German there. So, the Wild Chicks. Do you know, I just was in Seattle at the Comic-Con, and 4 teenagers came to me, and they were the US version of the Wild Chicks. Exact copies. They even owned goose and cheese and chicken. So I don't think I will ever do another book on that because I wrote so many. I wrote 6. But I very much hope still that it will be translated into English and come to the US because I'm asked so much about it.
Are you going to write a new story?
You know what? I can't help it. It's like if you ask me, will you drink another coffee? I write stories, I drink coffee, I eat chocolate. That's the 3 things I cannot stop doing.
Have you ever wrote a tragic story?
Oh yeah, sadly, sometimes I do that. You know, I have had readers who said they had cried for days and days because of things I've done in the stories. I feel always very guilty, but on the other hand, very pleased. Because, you know, what you do as a storyteller, sometimes, yes, I try to keep it quite light today because I did not know what age will come. But I have written books where, sadly, I make you cry. But I try to make up for it always at the end. I cannot write bad endings. That's just me.
What did you want to be before you became a writer?
I, at the age of 11, wanted to be an astronaut. And I was very serious about that because they had just landed on the moon. That's why you see how old I am already. And I thought they will soon have spaceships like in Star Trek, which I was completely obsessed with. And I'm very glad I didn't make that decision because look at them. They can't even fly to Jupiter yet. You know, so yeah. And let that be your lesson. Life will surprise you endlessly with what you turn out to be. I love to be a writer now, and they just told me if you put all the books I ever sold in one line, that would now go once around the planet. So, in a way, I became an astronaut.
Where did you get your accent?
I get that from the north of Germany. Germany is a small country in Europe. And this accent is from Hamburg. And of course, I was born in Westphalia, but the Westphalians don't really believe that because I have a Hamburg accent. And my son has no accent at all because he was already 11 when we came here. But I think it will stay.
Where did you get your dress?
Well, you know, that was made by 3 witches. One is a costume designer called Jenny Bevan, who has many Oscars and whatever things. She did the costumes for The King's Speech. She did the costumes for Sherlock Holmes. She did costumes for Sense and Sensibility, lots of glorious films. And then there's another woman called Jane Law, and she's the most famous tailor of England. And these women luckily find nothing more entertaining than do costumes for me, because I'm the only writer they do that for. Normally they do that for actors, and it seems that can get somehow boring at some point.
What's your favorite piece in the Getty?
Oh, that's a good question. And now all my friends will be listening and getting very angry with me if I don't say. So my favorite piece is the GRI, because that's the place where they helped me and where they showed me old photo albums from the 19th century where I could steal the faces for my book and make them into new characters. And I often go and have a coffee there, but I have to say I love it outside, and I love it also at the GCI because my daughter wants to be a conservationist. And it was so exciting for me to see all their equipment. So to say it in short, it's just the Getty. It's for me the Shangri-La. It's one of my favorite places in the world.
What is your favorite book that you've written?
Ooh, that is as if you asked me, do you like your son or your daughter better? No, they are like my printed children. So let me make a trick, and because they're all listening right now, and say the favorite is in a way always the book you're working on. And I'm working on a book at the moment, which is the third part in my MirrorWorld series, and that series owes a lot to the Getty because they helped me with all the research for it. And it is called Heartless. And I'm in the middle of Russia, and I just stole a flying carpet from the Tsar. So you can imagine I had lots of fun. But it got very sad and tragic in between, I admit.
When you have all your ideas in your head, how do you know to put them together to make them a good story?
Such a good question. You know, that the story tells you that. So you have to imagine, when I go into a story, it's like I go into a maze. Have you ever been in a labyrinth? You walk in and you don't know how you get out. You have no idea who's in there waiting for you. And that is for me every single story. And the more I learn as a writer, the bigger labyrinth they give me. And the story tries to trick me and say, no, that idea goes there. And then I run there and I put the idea there and it says, ha, Cornelia, tricked you. Go back 30 chapters, change them. And then I go back and I think, oh, it belongs here. And the story is like, yeah. And it tries to trick me again. So the whole time it is finding out who the story truly is, because they love to hide from you.
How many books have you written?
Oh, God, that's embarrassing. I've written more than 60. But many of them are picture books and easy reader books. Actually, in Germany, I think I have 62 books published, in Spanish too, but in English only 28. Because the English tend to only translate, the US publishers love to translate only the books that are really big. And I love also my small books. So now, luckily, this year, a few of my books for younger kids come out in America because one publisher finally agreed to do that. Otherwise, you have to learn Spanish. German is, I think, more difficult. Is there another question?
Where did you live when you didn't have a job?
Where did I live when I didn't have a job? Well, I got a job quite early. I was done with school. And my parents would not have been able to pay for me, so I needed to find a job. So my first job was in Hamburg. And then I was a social worker for a while, and then I earned my money by illustrating books. That was still not very much, but it got me through the month. And then at some point, I suddenly was a writer. And so many kids bought my books that I didn't have to worry about money anymore. I still don't know how that happened.
What was your favorite food?
Ooh, favorite. I did something very stupid right now. My favorite food is potato gratin. It's when you put potato and cheese into the oven and bake it. So if I ever have to go to the guillotine where they chop off my head, I will say before that, could you please do me another potato gratin? That would be my last meal.
What was your favorite book when you were a kid?
My favorite book, and I was already a teenager, was and is The Once and Future King by T.H. White. And that is a modern retelling of the King Arthur story. I have another one that competes with it, and that is William Goldman's Princess Bride. I would chop off a finger to have written that book.